Okay, we're now moving into section 2.3, factoring quadratics. We're going to spend the whole week on just factoring quadratics. So 2.3 will be in this section for the entire week. The first method of factoring that we're going to go over is called the difference of squares. The term difference means subtraction, and these squares show that each term, this first term and the second term, are both perfect squares. So here's your first learning target. I can factor perfect square binomials, and this is most commonly called the difference of squares. So here's our example, 4x squared minus 49 to start. And what makes this a difference of squares is that we're subtracting, that's the difference part, and then each term is a perfect square. So 4x squared, if I square root that, it comes out perfectly. The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of x squared is x. If I take 49 and I take the square root of it, that also comes out perfectly. And then that would be 7, because 7 times 7 is 49. So the square root of 49 is 7. So that's what makes this a difference of squares, the subtraction, and then both terms can be square rooted perfectly here. So to factor this, factoring is basically the opposite of foiling. Okay, so like we had before, this is just a side note here before we get into this. We had a problem like this before. X plus 2 times x minus 2, and we learned the FOIL method. So the first terms, x times x is x squared. Outside terms, x times negative 2 is negative 2x. Inside terms would be 2x, and then finally the last terms would be negative 4. And then these would cancel out because negative 2x plus 2x is 0, and you would be left with 2x minus 4 for your answer. So what we're doing is we're starting here, and we're going to work to find this, and that's called factoring. So we're starting here with 4x squared minus 49, and we want to break it down so it looks like this, okay? So the first thing we need to know is the formula for these difference of squares, or these perfect square binomials. And here it is. We're going to use the formula So we're starting with a squared minus b squared. So in this problem, our a squared term would be this 4x squared, and our b squared term would be this 49. So here's our a, here's our b. And then it's going to break down like this, and this is true every time. You take the square root of a squared, and you put it here. And then your signs are always plus and minus, always plus, minus. And then the square root of this b squared term goes here. So there's the formula. That is important to know. All right. So we're going to apply this formula to this problem. Step 2, you always need to check for a GCF. Check for a GCF. GCF stands for greatest common factor. So I'm going to look at each of these terms, 4x squared and 49, and see if it has a greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is the largest factor that divides evenly into each term. Okay, so I have two terms here. I have 4x squared and I have 49. So I'm thinking, is there a number that divides evenly into both 4 and 49? And there is not. So step 2, we can skip that because this problem does not have a greatest common factor. We will look at one that does eventually here. But for this problem, it doesn't. So I'm going to go down to step 3, and I'm going to write my parentheses out. Okay, so I'm going to write my parentheses, getting ready for this form here. So here I go up here. So here's my answer. I'm starting with my parentheses. All right. Now, step 4, we're going to find the square root of the a squared term. Find square root of the a squared term. And then we're going to put that in our parentheses. Okay, so it would go here and here, here and here. So let's go back to our problem here. So we're going to take the square root of 4x squared, and we already worked that out. We said that's 2x. So this 2x is going to go here and here. All right. Next, we're going to put in our signs. Step 5, add your signs. So now it would look like this: a plus, and then a minus. It's always the same, plus and minus, plus and minus. So we're going to do that up here, plus, minus. And now lastly, to find this last spot here, we're going to find the square root of that b squared term. And then we're going to put it in the parentheses. So it looks like this. So I have a plus, a minus. Now we're going to take that b and put it here and here. And then that would be the final answer. If you want to check it, remember this is opposite of FOIL, so to check it, we can use FOIL. Okay, this is optional. This is just a check. All right, so let's finish it up here. I take the square root of 49, which is 7, and I stick it in. So there's my final answer there. All right, let's try some more of these problems. Okay. Let's look at this one. 9x squared minus 16. So I'm going to start by checking for a GCF. Is there a number that can divide evenly into both 9 and 16? No, there is not. So there's no GCF. So I go to my next step. I'll write out my parentheses here. Now I'm going to find the square root of my first term here. So I'm finding the square root of 9x squared, and that would be 3x. I'm going to take that 3x and put it here and here. Now I'm going to add my signs, plus, minus. Now I'm going to take the square root of 16, which is 4, and stick in 4, 4. Final answer right there. All right, let's look at one that has a GCF. Okay, here's another example. Let's see, how about 2x squared minus 32? So I'm looking at my terms. I have 2 and 32. Is there a number that can divide evenly into both 2 and 32? Yes, there is. It is 2. I can divide both of these terms by 2. Therefore, my GCF is 2. Now I'm going to take that GCF and I'm going to put it out in front here. So I'm going to divide both of these by 2. What's left over? X squared. 32 divided by 2 is 16. So after I take out my GCF of 2, this is what my problem looks like. Now I'm going to continue to factor this, but I'm going to look at this part right here. So you have to bring down the 2, and then you start with your parentheses there. And you do it just like we did all the other ones. So we'll take the x squared, square root of x squared is x. So it goes x, x. Then I add my signs, plus, minus. Then I take my b term, my 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So 4, 4. Here's the final answer. All right, so let's look at your homework. For your homework, you have a worksheet to do. We're going to just go through and do several of these problems just for additional examples here. So here's your worksheet that you'll be doing. Let's look at a few of these. We're going to just work through some of these. So we'll start with number 1. Check for your GCF. There isn't one. There's no number that can divide into 9 and 1 other than 1, but that doesn't help us at all. So we can just go straight to our parentheses here. And we'll take the square root of 9x squared. That would be 3x. Then I'm going to add my signs, plus and minus. Then I'll take the square root of 1, which is 1. And that's your answer. Okay, let's look at number 2. Check for a GCF. Is there a number that can divide into 4 and 49 evenly? No, there's not. So I'll go ahead and write my parentheses. I'll take the square root of 4n squared. That would be 2n. Add my signs, plus, minus. Take the square root of 49, that's 7. And that's your answer. All right, go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try these next 4 on your own. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to try those on your own. Here's the answer here. This one, 6k plus 1, 6k minus 1. This one would be p plus 6, and then p minus 6. Number 5 has a GCF. Both 2 and 18 can be divided by 2 evenly, so my GCF is 2 for this one. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to take out a 2, factor out this 2. So divide both of these by 2, so that would just be x squared. 18 divided by 2 is 9, so I have that. Now I'm going to continue to factor my difference of squares here, so I'll bring down my GCF of 2, 2 parentheses, and then this would be x plus 3, x minus 3. And then this right here is my answer. All right, next one. So this has a GCF as well. The largest number that can divide into 196 and 144 is 4. So my GCF is 4 here. So I'm going to divide both terms by 4. So 4, and then 196 divided by 4 is 49. So 49n squared minus, and then 144 divided by 4 is 36. Now I still have a difference of squares, so I'm going to factor that. So I'm going to carry over that 4 there. And then square root of 49n squared is 7n. Plus and minus, square root of 36 is 6. And that would be your answer there. All right, let's skip down to some of the more challenging ones. So let's go look at 13. For 13, there's no GCF. Then I'm going to take the square root of a squared, that's a, plus minus. Square root of 25b squared is 5b. You have to take the square root of b squared, that's b, so 5b there. And then that would be your answer. Pause the video, try 14. All right, let's see how you did on 14. No GCF here. Square root of 4x squared is 2x. Signs plus minus. Square root of 49y squared is 7y. All right, let's try a few more. Let's skip down to 21. Okay, so 21 right here. Looking for a GCF. No GCF there. So I'm going to take the square root of 36a to the 4th. That would be 6. And then the square root of a to the 4th is a squared, because a squared times a squared equals a to the 4th. Plus minus. Then that would be 5. Square root of b to the 4th is b squared. All right. Let's look at 22. So remember, always try, always look for that GCF first. So for 22, it does have a GCF. Both 2 and 72 can be divided evenly by 2. But notice, both terms have an R. So I can factor out an R. So my GCF is 2R. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to take out a 2R. 2 divided by 2 is just 1, so that drops off. And then I have x to the 4th. And then we took that R out. So what's left over is x to the 4th. And the way to check this is to multiply it. So 2r times x to the 4th is 2x to the 4th r. So it's like the opposite of multiplication there. So you check it with multiplication. All right, minus 72 divided by 2 is 36. That r came out, so we're left with 36 y to the 4th. All right, now this is still a difference of squares, so I can keep going here. So I'm going to bring over that 2r, and then I'm going to write out my 2 parentheses there. Then I'm going to take the square root of x squared, which is, or sorry, the square root of x to the 4th, which is x squared, signs plus a minus, and then the square root of 36 y to the 4th, that would be square root of 36 is 6, and then the square root of y to the 4th is y squared. And then this is your final answer there. All right, pause the video, try number 23 on your own. 23. All right, to check 23, I'm looking for my GCF first. So the largest number that can divide into 125 and 20 is 5. So my GCF is 5. I'm going to start there. 125 divided by 5 is 25. And then m to the 4th. Minus 20 divided by 5 is 4, n to the 4th. Okay. So I took my GCF out. Now I can factor this difference of squares here. All right, so I brought that 5 over. And then I'm going to take the square root of 25m to the 4th. That's 5m squared. Signs plus minus. And then the square root of 4n squared would be 2n. Oh, I'm sorry, that was an n to the 4th here. Good thing I caught that. So that means the square root of 4n to the 4th would be 2n squared. 2n squared. And then that would be your final answer right there. All right, so your homework is to finish up this worksheet. So go ahead, go back and finish up this worksheet and then submit it into Google Classroom.